A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Evening Review. My name is Taiwan Jabela. Tonight on the platform, we are joined by Josef Kauandenge. He is president of the Association for Localized Interest. It's a newly announced formation that Mr. Kauandenge will explain in a moment. But first, we want to address his press statement that he issued last week ahead of the Genocide Day, the 28th of May, where he felt that traditional leaders who mattered the most in that Maidan event were excluded from the formal program, from the day's proceedings. Thank you very much, President, for making time. Congratulations on your new formation. You are a man of many, you're a pedestrian politician, but we'll talk about it in a moment. Let's first talk about your unhappiness regarding how the program was set up for the 28th of May.
Yes. I did issue a statement last week with regard to that. My contention was that the day genocide came about because of persistent calls from the affected communities that we have so many holidays in Namibia. Why don't we have a day dedicated to the genocide of 1904, 1907, right? And it has come a long way in our parliament until it eventually was signed into law last year by the former president, Nagolo. So now, naturally, one will expect that although the day is a national, holiday for all Namibians, it does not take away the reality of why and how did the day came about. So there is a history, obviously, behind the said day. So I was a little just perplexed, really, to see that on the program, one could see that the affected communities, through their representatives, which are the traditional chiefs, were nowhere to be found on the program of the day.
Yeah.
And that's where I said, but this cannot be.
Yeah.
Obviously, the President of the Republic can still be the keynote speaker. It's a national day for all Namibians, yes, but why were those leaders not put on the program? And that was my problem.
Absolutely. I agree with you totally on that, Joseph. What I fear might have played itself out in the conversations is also perhaps the fact that in some communities, especially the Ovaherero community, there are still divisions as to who actually is the chief, the paramount chief, for argument's sake. You have Hoderi Roko this side, Professor Kashiro on the other. In that, but then for the Namas, I think it's quite clear that this unity of who their leaders are there. In the Herero case, what would have been the wise thing to do?
Well, for progress' sake, the government could have invited both claimants to the throne. They could have invited Prof. Kashiwa, claiming that he is a paramount chief. He could have declined or come. They could have invited Dr. Hoderi Rwako to also come, to be a little bit inclusive.
Yeah.
Now, the argument, on the other hand, was that it's a national day, so we must we must do away with making it as if the day is more tribal orientated. Some argument were saying that. But I said, even if you look at this day, like Kasinga, for instance, Kasinga is a national holiday, right? But for the longest time that I have witnessed and attended some of the Kasinga celebration, commemoration, you will see on the program that those survivors of Kasinga are put on that program. They will narrate as to what happened in Kasinga that day. They will tell the youngsters that are there that what actually happened, where were they that day, when the planes came in with the bombardments and whatnot. They are always on that program. Yeah. The same with Ogulubashi. So why then will this be different from the public holidays that we have been commemorating all this time around, where you want those that don't know the history to be told by those that know their own history through their own mouth as to this is what happened, this is what we were told by our forefathers or mothers, and this is what we want to send as a message to the outside world. For instance, the German ambassador was also in attendance. Would that not have been a perfect opportunity for him as a new ambassador that came now to also listen directly from the descendants of the genocide as to what will their demands be also at the end of the day with the joint declaration that is still to be signed. I don't know when we are still alive or when we are dead. So that is really where I was taking it from that perspective, that perhaps in the next commemoration or so, government should be very sensitive to that issue.
Yeah. You have said here in your statement that the administration of President Ndaitwah has erred greatly, and history will record this as a travesty and a slap in the face of those descendants, the descendants' truthful representatives who have been ignored on purpose. So do you think that the politicians monopolized the occasion, especially against the very background that you just gave, that this day came about as a result of persistent agitation by the descendants of the affected communities? And once the day was now brought upon us, you seem to think that somebody else just then came and monopolized the occasion.
Absolutely. For instance, because this was an inaugural day of the genocide, the first ever in Namibia, right?
Yeah.
Why would they even not give a chance to a person like Honorable Maberwa?
Yeah.
Because if we remember very well, Honorable Usutfaye Maberwa was the one that brought the motion into Parliament. Well, I understand that once the motion comes to Parliament, it's debated and whatnot, and once it passes, it becomes a resolution and what is it? It becomes something that belongs to the Parliament as a whole. But particularly because he was very key as well. Even if the argument was that, okay, we cannot invite traditional chief from the Hereros because they are, there are conflicts within their community. What about the person that brought the motion into Parliament? Surely he could have had much value in terms of if he could take us back as to what were the discussions behind the closed doors to come to the conclusion of this day. What was his motivation for 28th of May? Because even when most of those that don't know genocide were sitting there, they were also asking themselves that, but why 28th of May? What happened on the 28th of May?
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, because there's that huge debate now.
Yes.
People saying, the 28th of May was essentially the closure of the concentration camps.
Yes.
And to mark that as the key point instead of the start of the killings, it's a misplaced view. What is your take on that?
Well, those might have a sound argument. Those proponents of that argument, they might have a good argument in the sense that they want the 2nd of October actually to be the genocide day. Why? Because that's when the order was given by von Trotter to say that Hereros must be killed, even their kids and women, doesn't matter. That's the extermination order that was given on that day in in the area of Chinene. So they might have an argument. But again, also you have to look at the side of the Namas. What are they saying? So you have to balance the two.
Yeah.
Because the Namas community were wanting 12th of April, isn't it, if I'm not mistaken? And Ovahereros were wanting the 2nd of October. So I think, because I was not at Parliament at that time when the debate started, when Honorable Maberwa was there, but I think perhaps they look at to what is the compromise between the 2 dates.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's where they came down to the 28th of May, when the concentration camps was closed. But that debate will still continue for some time to come as to which one is the best day for the genocide. But unfortunately, as we stand now, the 28th of May has been gazetted.
Yeah.
It's on our public calendar, rightly or wrongly, because you could see last week that we hardly work any day. You work today, tomorrow is a holiday.
Yeah.
Maybe going forward, we have to look as to whether this is economical or making any economical sense that the whole week we only have holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't like that one bit. It was, and I've written it in my editorial also to say that it was the whole of May. I mean, why do we like holidays so much? And to make matters worse is this directives to public servants that 10 o'clock they must already leave. I mean, how can people just work for 2 hours and then they go, if they arrived on time at all, instead of at least, at the most, work half the day until lunch? Because imagine if you're coming from Khobabes to come to Homa Affairs for a particular service that is only offered in Windhoek. And to make matters worse, these announcements of releasing public servants were only made on the day. So you struggle, you find transport money, you arrive in Windhoek, you are told by the security guards on site that no, people have left at 10 o'clock. I think it's lazy. For me, it's lazy. But back on the topic, Joseph, before we go for a break, next year again, because this is an annual event going forward, how must we deal with these things? Because again, the dynamics within the communities, forget about what I said earlier about the two claimants to the paramount chief position. Within the Ovaherero, you also have different traditional houses. How do you call it?
The royal houses.
The royal houses. And then you have your Mbanderu's one, your Mbanderu ones, and then you have within the mainstream of Ovaherero community, if I can call it that way, you also have your own one, a number of them. I mean, how should, and by the way, there are these arguments within Ovaherero community that paramount chief is not, because for some it means that you are the chief of all Ovaherero. But if you go to Machete and parts of Kunene, people are saying, no, we have our own chiefs here. A guy from elsewhere is not our chief. So how will the community, like the broader Ovaherero community, choose that one person? Or must all the chiefs now speak at the occasion?
No, I think the issue of paramount chief was well intended by our four bearers, the Mahareros, the Samuel Mahareros, the Hosea Kutakos. It's just unfortunate that in this day and age it have become more politicized. But we must ask ourselves the reasons why they started with the issue of paramount chief, right? It was to bring everybody under one central leadership, especially, of course, the royal houses can still exist in their own right because they are royal. Even under the late Chief Rirwako, he was the paramount chief of the Ovaherero people. And how do you define a person being a paramount chief of the Ovaherero people? You define by virtue of the following that the person has, isn't it? If the majority of those subjects are following that particular person, and you have a minority somewhere in the corner saying, no, he's not our chief, it's fine and good. And that's why Chief Rirwako did not even bother. He said, okay, I'm here as paramount chief for those that follow me. The rest that are there in the corner, it's fine, let them remain there. But then again, I think to answer your question, it's because we have come to politicize it more. If it was strictly at the level of traditional leadership, it would not have been a problem. We have today, unfortunately, scholars that have become chiefs. But during our time, traditional chief role were only confined to those old tatters that have been there without their education or qualification, but who knows the traditional norms and standard of their people. So they will keep their people together irrespective. But now all of a sudden, even me or you, as land colleagues, we are now traditional chief, and then we want to pave and cave our own way, and that's where the problems comes.
Yeah.
But to your first question, one would like to know who's advising our current president, really, in terms of his advice or her advisors. And I think that's where the problem is. Because if our president had good advisors that tried to protect her image as a leader of this country, they could have advised her to say, directly engage with these traditional chiefs.
Yeah.
Call them on a table. You are the president of the country. Ask them directly. Next year we are commemorating the Genocide Day. Let's forget about whether you agree with the date or not. That's water under the bridge. The day is gazetted as we speak now. Now, how will you want us to move as a unit, as a collective, to make this day a success? Then she listen. She must not exclude who, she must invite everybody.
Yeah.
And I think through that engagement, there will be a consensus as to how to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. We go for a very short break and return with Josef Kauandenge. We are back with Josef Kauandenge, President of ASOLI. Now, Mr. President, the ASOLI is it correct to classify it as a political party? Is it an association? What is the correct classification?
Thank you very much. Strange enough is that Namibians, many of us are very lazy to read.
Yeah.
The word is Association for Localized Interest.
Yes.
Which means that Kauandenge has not started a political party yet.
Yeah.
What I have started is an association strictly to campaign for the Windhoek municipal election in November this year.
Yeah.
So ASOLI is by definition now an association, not a political party.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, semantics, really. If you put up your hand to be elected, essentially, but I understand you.
Yes.
So, you were until recently the Secretary General of NUDO. Prior to that, you were, of course, with the Namibia Democratic Movement for Change. Prior to that, you were actually the Secretary. You were the Secretary General of the DTA Youth League, the modern PDM now. And many years ago, in the late 90s, you came up with a political party called the Namibia Movement for Independent Candidates. If I'm a devotee to the Josef Kauandenge kind of politics, and I keep following you, and I follow you to this political party, and then you leave me there, then you move to another one, maybe I follow you, then you leave me there. I mean, where must I trace and hold on to Josef Kauandenge politically going forward?
No, it's a very good question and a very relevant one. But let's go into memory, because sometimes that's why I'm saying that Namibians are suffering from amnesia.
Yeah. When
Kauandenge was moving from this party to that party, it was during the period of 2004, 2006.
Yeah.
But that's 30 years ago, almost. 27 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, my answer to that question will always be that at that time I was 26 years old. How many of our own kids at home that are 26 years old are having the mental capacity to distinguish and make the right decisions in their lives?
Yeah.
So, and how many of us have made mistakes in our youth?
Yeah.
And should these mistakes be the defining factor to the rest of our lives?
Yeah. Yeah.
For Namibians that don't know, Kauandenge followed the late Chief Rirwako in 2003 to the when he pulled out Nuto from the DTA. I worked my butts off for the party Nuto. I was the Secretary General of Nuto. Come 2004, in September that year, it's just unfortunate that I have to say this, but my chief betrayed me greatly because I was the second to him and I was about to go to Parliament in 2004. And all of a sudden, there was a story concocted there. I was removed from the SG and somebody else came into my place and went to Parliament in my place. So for a young person, that was really demoralizing. I was not in in my right frame of mind. Even when I was moving here, there, I was really, demoralized. I was through greater depression. I don't think I made those mistakes or those decisions consciously at that time, because I was really hating to see that why will a person that I followed, that I was willing to die for, that I worked for Nuto for 2 years without a salary or anything, and then all of a sudden he did that to me. So from that context, that's where I want Namibians to understand me that well, those decisions during that time was really not conscious decisions that I made. So, but then I went, right? I went into music, I went to study, I went into business. 2014, the Nuto members themselves, after the death of Chief Rirwako, the leaders, came back to me and asked me to come back to Nuto. And since 2014 up to where I am now, until last year, I was a member of Nuto. I did not go to any political party for 10 years. And here, that's when I'm making this move now again. So, giving that background, really, and even in this day and age, there are politicians that are moving from one party to the next.
No, look,
you know, people have to have that background to be able to ask, will you hold someone that made this decision at 26 years old, that have matured with time, that is an old man now, although he's looking young, that is experienced now, will you hold him still responsible for those decisions 30 years ago?
I agree. Look, I actually, for me, moving political parties is not even an issue for me. I respect people who have the guts to say, no, this is no longer the organization that I joined. The principles are being trampled upon, and therefore I cannot be party to this. I actually respect those people than those that
hibernate and stay there.
Yes, absolutely. But in closing, the only issue in your case that I have is that the parties that I read here, at least 2 of them were your own formations, if I remember correctly, because the Namibia Movement for Independent Candidates, I think that you were part of those that formed it. And then the one of the Namibia Democratic Movement for Change, the NDMC.
No, that was not my formation. I only formed the Namibia Movement for Change, and that was in somewhere there, yes. But it briefly also, it was a brief one, because then that one I formed, I think around 97. And then the late Paramount Chief came to me and said, no, but leave this one. Because I respected the men so much. I said, okay, fine, let me go back to the DTA. But that's the only one. I haven't formed any other political party. So
to the ASOLI followers, you say what in terms of this pedestrian men? Are you now settled? Is ASOLI now your home now? Or if you get battered in November, we are going to see you again jumping ship?
No. I think
throwing out your baby with
No. I think there was a time for me to join any political party in this country, and believe me, the insults that people are throwing Kauandenge side. If I decide today that I want to join this political party, there is no political party in this country that will say, no, he must not come because he is a political pedestrian. All parties will just accept me and they will give me all those top positions there. But I decided consciously this time around that I'm not going to join any political party. I'm going to start something and I'm going to persist with it. whether November comes and whatever happens there, I think I have made up my mind, mature enough now, conscious of my decisions now, that I will remain here where I am. Because if I wanted to go anywhere, because believe me, to start a political party or an association, it's not easy. Because there are funds involved, there are hard work involved. If I did not start this consciously, I could have just said, this is too much work. Let me go to LPM or PDM or SWAPO or whatever. But I decided to start this one. So I'm here for the long haul. I'm not going anywhere.
Absolutely. Yes. We are going to play this clip 5 years from now if you jump again. But I hope you're a settled man now. Joseph.
No, I am.
So it's a pleasure talking to you, brother.
Okay.
That is Josef Kauandenge. He is president of ASOLI. ASOLI, we say it's Association of Localized Interest, which seeks to compete in the November local authority elections this year. Thank you for watching.